and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining me. This week, Senator John Horhn is the Democrat for District 26 in Hinds and Madison counties, and he's a 30-year veteran of the state legislature. He sits down for a one-on-one interview on election year politics, legislative prospects, and the direction of today's Mississippi Democratic Party. And Mississippi's wealthiest county, Madison's mayor, takes aim at Madison County supervisors with a lawsuit over rezoning. It's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. Democrat John Horhn has a variety of roles in the state Senate. He chairs the Senate Labor Committee, he's vice chair of the Tourism Committee, and he's a member of the powerful Legislative Budget Committee. The senator from Hinds and Madison counties joins me now in the studio. John Horhn, welcome back to Mississippi Insight.
Byron, it's always great to be here.
Let's establish now you're uncontested for District 26 going into the November election, right?
I was fortunate enough not to have anyone sign up against me come this past March 1.
What are your general observations on the election season so far, and what are you seeing when we come to these primary runoffs come Tuesday?
Well, you've got several contested supervisor races here locally. You have several local legislative races, mostly in the House. You're not seeing any statewide races that have gone to runoff at this point. But I think folks are kind of setting their sights on the general election and seeing what fireworks will come out of the governor's race.
Any thoughts on those House races there in the metro area? What are you expecting there?
I've not really followed the race of Keith Stamps. I think that's the old House District 68, if I'm not mistaken. And he's running for Public Service Commission and is the Democratic nominee for that position. And then the woman who's had a long and illustrious career in the House of Representatives, Representative Alice Clark, has finally decided to hang up her spurs, and she's got a couple of candidates that are in a fairly hotly contested race there. The niece of Alice Horhn, the late Alice Horhn, Tamara Grace Butler Washington, I think is her name, but we all call her Grace, and she's led that ticket. I'd be surprised if she didn't lead the ticket to the finish line.
Delbert Hosemann easily won a Republican primary for lieutenant governor. He'll likely return next year as president of the Senate. How do you rate Hosemann as a legislative leader and someone who can work across the aisle?
Delbert Hosemann is a visionary. He really is looking after what he thinks is the best interest of the state of Mississippi. And I think he realizes that no one can govern in a vacuum. You have to provide some means to the other side for opportunity for getting some results and so forth. And the leaders who understand that, I think, govern best. So Delbert has been a good leader of the state Senate. He has taken and accepted input from a lot of different sources. I don't think that makes him a Democrat by any stretch of the imagination, but a good Republican knows when to listen to good Democrats. And I think that Delbert Hosemann is a guy who's cut from that cloth, and I think you will see his being a lot bolder in this second term. He is term limited out. And I think there's some things that he wants to accomplish. He's already signaled that health care is going to be at the top of his list, which, if the Governor Tate Reeves is reelected, might lead to a big showdown in state government between the governor's office and the legislature. I think if he does that, though, he's got a long road to hoe in terms of getting the rest of the legislature, very conservative, right-wing, who's been saying and harping for 10, 12 years that we don't want that Medicaid, we don't want Obamacare. So he's going to have a big job ahead of him to bring the governor, if it's Reeves, and the rest of the legislature in the House and Senate, the conservative legislature, to the table to pass some kind of Medicaid expansion. If he does that, I think that's his legacy going down the road.
Mm-hmm. With a new House Speaker in the how will that change
well,
things?
Jason White is the heir apparent to Philip Gunn as the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. I think that Jason has worked his votes, and unless something earth-shattering occurs, he's going to be the next Speaker of the House. And he is someone that I found I can work with, and I think that we'll see a lot more cooperation between the parties with the leadership of Jason White and Delbert Hoseman.
Hoseman does face a Democratic opponent, Ryan Grover of Hattiesburg. What can you tell us about Grover, and does he pose any kind of threat against Hoseman come November?
Who? That answers the question. I don't know the gentleman. I hope that he has a successful run. As far as I know, this is his first time out, but I know nothing about the individual.
Moving on to the governor's race, that's the big race that everyone's going to be talking about. You support Democrat Brandon Presley's campaign against Republican incumbent Tate Reeves.
I do.
From your perspective, how do you see this race matching up come November?
It's going to be a lot closer than I think some people think it will be. Of course, it's Tate Reeves' race to lose. He's the incumbent. He's sitting on a gigantic war chest. He's got the power of the governor's office, in his back pocket right now. But I think this is going to be a close race, and I think that there's a lot of anti-Tate Reeves sentiment out there, but that often does not translate at the ballot box. A lot of folks don't like Tate, but they still vote for him. The most telling statistic that I've seen in this race that came out 3 or 4 months ago was that likely Republican voters who were heading into the primaries said they plan to vote for Tate Reeves. 22% of them said in the general election they plan to vote for Brandon Presley. Now, if I'm Tate Reeves, I'm concerned about that. Brandon's job, on the other hand, is that his name recognition and name ID is not as strong in the black community as it needs to be. I was at a meeting, a community meeting in North Hinds County a couple of weeks ago, and there were 100 people in the room. 95% of them were African American. The question was posed, everybody who knows who Brandon Presley is, raise your hand. 15 hands went up out of 95, 100 people. And so he's got some name ID issues in the black community that he's got to overcome.
And how does he do that?
Well, I think he's going to need an elected official who serves in Congressional District 2 to get heavily behind him. And the other interesting thing about Presley, that's 22% statistic of likely Republican voters. That's interesting. The other thing is that, to my recollection, Congressman Benny Thompson has not endorsed a Democratic nominee for governor since the late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that was Ray Mabus, his candidacy. If he did endorse someone, it was late in the race. Within 2 hours of Presley's announcing for governor, Benny Thompson endorsed him for governor. That's very telling. And if the power of Thompson and his political might really gets behind Brandon Presley and gets an enthusiastic vote behind Presley out of the black community, he's got a shot. But everything's got to line up just right. Our party is in shambles right now. We have a new state chairman, party chairman, Sheck Taylor, bright young man, is in his second term in the state legislature. And he's a very outstanding young man. I think he's going to be a good leader for the party, but he can't do it alone. He's got to have some support. The National Governors Association signaled that they were excited, at least, about Presley's race, to the point where they gave him $750,000. Hadn't happened in Mississippi in ages. So I think all eyes are on Mississippi right now and this gubernatorial race because of the fact that Presley has a better shot to win this race than any other Democrat in the last generation.
Governor Tate Reeves has about 5-to-1 lead on fundraising over Presley. How is that going to match up?
It has a tremendous impact. I mean, if you're sitting on top of $8 or $9 million of a war chest and you're still actively raising money, and the other guys is sitting at maybe $1 million, $1.5 million at last count. I don't know where it is now. That's a tremendous advantage. But, dollar bills don't pull the levers. People do. And sometimes money, the enthusiasm of the electorate will outpace however much money an individual has.
We'll have more with Senator John Horhn when Mississippi Insight continues. In 2023, Democrats hold minority status in both the House and the Senate. All 8 state offices are held by Republicans, and come November, the party will offer only nominal contenders for most of those races and offices. What would 2027 look like if your party set a new direction now and does all the right things? What do you see happening 4 years from now?
Well, I would say not much. And the reason that I say that at the legislative level now and at the congressional level, now at the local level it might be a different thing, but the pattern has been set through redistricting. And we won't see any major shifts in the legislative power structure, I don't think, in my lifetime, because of redistricting and the gerrymandering, and I'm calling it gerrymandering, but it's gerrymandering not from a racial standpoint, it's from a party standpoint. And so the Republican Party has entrenched itself in party leadership and legislative leadership, again, I think for the next generation.
So on the statewide races, though, would that
statewide,
help Democrats can maybe win?
Democrats can turn the tables on Republicans in statewide races, and of course, you know, in the races where there's Democratic majorities in House and Senate races. But yeah, if Brandon Presley makes a good showing and winds up winning the governor's office, I think it represents a sea change in terms of some of the policies in the state, because the governor sets a lot of policy through his executive branch. So that may give us some added fuel to be able to take some of the other seats, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, State Auditor, perhaps. But the party's got to do a lot of rebuilding in order for that to be pulled off.
Where do you see voters today, Democrats and Republicans? Is this a very conservative state? Is it a moderate state? Is it a purple state? Where are we today?
Well, we're still, in terms of policy and leadership, a very red state. But numerically, we could easily be a blue state, or at least a purple state, with the right kinds of leadership and groundwork being put in place, and the right amount of resources. The Democratic Party is past broke. and so, you know, we don't have a lot of the financial resources to be able to build a ground game. But if Presley were to win the governor's office in Mississippi, then I think you'll see additional resources coming in. You'll see a reinvigorated party, a party that has more hope now than it seems to have, you know, in the last in recent times. And so his victory could be a major sea change in Mississippi, but you got to have you got to build a ground game, and we don't have the ground game right now.
Yeah, presuming that Republicans control the House and the Senate come next legislative session, what are the priorities for Democrats in 2024?
Healthcare, the expansion of Medicaid remains at the top of our list. It impacts too many people in Mississippi. 9,000 new employees could be hired with the expansion of Medicaid. We can get $1 billion additional dollars in the state every year. Our own state economist has told us that this program will pay for itself through the new hires and the sales and income tax that will be generated by the new hires. It will pay for itself. This is a political issue. It is not an economic or financial issue in terms of any hardship that would be put on the state to expand Medicaid.
Let's move on to local politics. The Hinds County Supervisors race. 2 supervisors are out. 2 supervisors are facing runoffs on Tuesday. What do you make of the politics with the Hinds County Supervisors that's going on here?
Folks got tired of the mess. You know, when you see elected officials operating in a non-professional manner, and it's coming into your living room every night on Byron Brown is reporting it. And so I think a lot of folks just got fatigued by it. I think that David Archie probably was the tip of the spear in people's minds as to some of the disruption that was going on. And in my opinion, I think that Creedell Calhoun, who was by and large the most savvy member on that board. He served as a state legislator, he served as a city councilman, and now supervisor. He, I believe, probably got too involved in taking some other folks out. He wound up getting taken out himself.
And so what do you see happening there with the supervisors once this is all said and done?
I think it's too close to call right now. You've got Malcolm Johnson taking on incumbent Bobcat McGowan. I just know him by Bobcat. Taking him on, who's the incumbent, and that's going to be a tight race. He has not been in the news as much as some of the other supervisors, so he might skate by. In the case of Wanda Evers, who's the operating manager of WMPR community radio station, daughter of civil rights leader Charles Evers, she has a pretty commanding presence right now in the race, but Vernon Gavin, who's the incumbent, might be able to tough it out and win, but that's going to be a tough race for Vernon.
Because of what happened here, do you see the supervisors maybe acting differently after this is all said and done?
I certainly hope so. I think voters are sending a strong message. Every last one of those supervisors had tough competition, and many of them probably have not had that in recent years, and so it sent a strong message, and maybe the decorum, the professionalism will return to the Hinds County Board of Supervisors as a result.
And how important is local leadership to voters and to working with the state and the federal government? How important is that?
Byron, you know, some folks might know who John Horhn is. He's a senator. I've been there for 31 years. They might know who I am. Everybody knows who their supervisor is. Everybody knows who their city councilman is. And as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. So if my garbage isn't being picked up or if my water isn't working, I know who the person is that I got to deal with to get that fixed. In the legislature, folks, you know, maybe know me because I've been there for a long time. But you know who your councilman is and you know who your supervisor is.
All right, we'll leave it like that. John Horhn, thank you. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Byron. Appreciate it.
And we'll be right back.
I don't know how 2026 timeline for a case is a speedy trial. And I know of no candidate running for office who say, oh, but I'm running for office, I don't have time for a trial. Well, it's a criminal trial. Criminal trials are not postponed because you're running for public office. And a former president is no different.
Madison County residents have front row seats from a new legal battle between some county supervisors and the mayor of Madison. Mayor Hawkins Butler has filed suit alleging a rezoning deal broke state law. 12 News' Richard Lake filed this report on the legal action.
According to the lawsuit filed by Madison Mayor Mary Hawkins Butler, a rezoning scheme and land donation from the mid-2000s is illegal. The Bozeman Family Limited Partnership donated approximately 35 acres of land to Madison County with one condition. Construction of Reunion Parkway must begin within 2 years of the land donation. That land donation also residing in 350 acres of already zoned land.
The property that we are talking about is in our path of growth. We are proposing to annex that property. The county blanket zoned 350 acres of land. But most of all, they rezoned it based on the property owner giving them land for right-of-way. You cannot give land for rezoning.
To rezone property in Mississippi, you must prove that there was a mistake in the original zoning or that the surrounding area has changed so much that a change is justified and that the public will benefit. A public hearing also must be held for all interested parties, including citizens.
You cannot legally rezone property in exchange for right-of-way.
The lawsuit targets District 3 Supervisor Gerald Steen, District 4 Supervisor Carl Banks, and District 5 Supervisor Paul Griffin, as well as the bonding company, in an effort to get them to repay the $965,000 used to purchase the land. Madison County Board of Supervisors attorney Mike Espy declined to comment, citing a review of the lawsuit. Reporting in Jackson, Richard Lake, 12 News.
If you have comments or questions about today's show or a suggestion for an interview or segment, just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@wjtv.com. And we'll be right back. Big thanks to Senator John Horhn for joining us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.